My presentation is called Social Cartography, but the outline is I want to give you guys a quick 10-minute catch-up on what the media landscape is, online media. Because things have changed in the last few years dramatically, not only for media, but for online media too. And if you understand kind of the situation that we're in, you'll understand the solutions that we're looking for. Then I want to tell you a little bit about the tools and methods for web analytics that we use. It's not going to be your normal Google Analytics, how to use Google Analytics talk. I'm going to talk just a broad overview of frameworks, types of tools, types of problems that you might face. And then lastly, I want to introduce this idea of social analytics that we've been building for over a year now at Rappler. This is what I came here to do. Well, one of the kind of side effects of that was this innovation document got leaked. So the New York Times has had a big challenge. They're the largest, probably the leading newspaper in the world, and they haven't been able to effectively monetize online. Nobody has. So they tried really, really hard. Basically, all of our users are coming in from one of those entry points, one of those channels. They're reading an article that they're interested in. If they see another one, they'll go read that. That's pretty much it. They're just coming in to read that one piece of content. A few people are still brand loyalists. They go to a homepage. That's not really the mode of consumption anymore. And we have to realize it's about delivering that mode of consumption. And that's social killed the homepage, right? Because people want on-demand news. They want to be able to see what their friends are talking about. They want to see what content interests them, not what brand interests them. When do you get your news? Do you get it during the morning or evening news show? You know, back back in the state, whatever. But not anymore. People want it on demand, whether on the subway or on the bus, and we get it on their cell phone, right? So that's another reality that we have to face. People are changing their consumption habit. And the last one is mobile brains. This shows the growth of mobile, right? So the mobile usage as a percentage of web usage in regions. Look at the two highest. One of them is Asia, right? That's right here. You guys are leapfrogging the older technologies that have been sort of embedded in Europe and the States at that spot. And it's going mobile faster. So that means all the stuff that we have to do is to be ready for mobile. And that probably applies for a lot of the groups in here. A lot of the apps you're building, a lot of the services you're rendering are going to companies that are trying to deliver on mobile. So that has some pretty interesting consequences for us. We have to rethink how the site works. We have to rethink how we measure our audience. Are we engaging well with them? And we also have to think, oh boy, how do we pay for this? Because news is an interesting thing. News need high quality writing, and people expect it for free. And so we have to figure out a way to make all of that work, right? To keep the machine going and maintain sort of editorial control. You don't want to turn into a BuzzFeed or just a mouthpiece for some large company, right? We need to be able to do both. It's very hard balance, and we try to strike that. So going forward, I want to talk a little bit about tools, right? So what do I do on a day-to-day basis? And what I do really is try to rapidly come up with approximate answers to complex questions. And so this is my data toolbox, right? And it has kind of 5 drawers. The first one, framing. How do you think about a problem? So web analytics has a very traditional way of thinking about it, right? How many people come to your site? And then we got a little bit more advanced about it. Other people who come to your site, how many of those people are going to be getting to your goal? How many of them are buying whatever you're selling? Or at Rappler, how many of them are reading your articles? How long are they reading your articles? Your KPIs, right? And then you realize people from different demographics do that differently, so you break it down by demographic. More importantly, people from different ad channels. Are they coming in from Google AdWords? Are they coming from Facebook? They all have sort of different ways, and this is called funneling. This is a really basic way of doing it. It's extremely useful, very simple. But I would suggest that one that's more useful for us at Rappler is the other one here, which is a cycle. Instead of being a funnel, we think about it like a cycle. Because our goal isn't actually selling something, right? It's an end there. Our goal is trying to share information. And since we're on social now, since the homepage is dead, sharing is the lifeblood of any information on the internet. At this point, it's all social. It may be something in the future, but right now, it's Facebook mainly, and then all the others. So what we think of is, how can we turn that funnel into a cycle? And so at the end, our goal is really sharing, really driving it forward, right? Trying to turn this into something that will grow itself. And this is the framework that we come at it with. So you don't come at it with the framework of how do I get people less and less and less and less and more and more. You try to turn less into It's something that we like to contribute to, it's something that we like to use. Now those are technologies we do use, those are technologies that I think are great. It's not necessarily an endorsement though, I'm also not an evangelist for any one platform or programming language. Whatever you know works. Use the tool that you know, use the tool that's the problem. But data collection cleaning is a big problem, especially in the era of big data, right? So it's this buzzword, but what do we mean by it? There are a couple features. One of the features is it's heterogeneous, right? It's messy. That's why we use document store, something like MongoDB or Keynote or Cassandra. Those work really well because the data doesn't have to be as structured as it would in a relational database like SQL, MySQL, SQLite. There's also another factor of it. Sometimes it needs to be distributed, right? So it needs to be across multiple machines. Or when you're analyzing it, it can't fit in memory. So you do something like MapReduce, Hadoop, or something like that. So those are all really important things to think about. But actually, you can get really far with a much simpler tool than all that. Really just using a POSIX system, like a Linux or Unix, and being able to master the command line tools is an awesome step forward for prototyping these things. Next on the list, data repositories. If you want to practice, get out there and practice. There's so much data out there that you can model and validate. Kaggle.com, K-A-G-G-L-E, has some really cool competitions you can do. If you get really good at it, you might get a prize like money or a job interview. Facebook was one a while ago. Striping, you can do that. Open up a programming language like Python, use it as a browser. Pull this stuff down. You can get a lot of information from scraping. I already went over the command line tools. And then lastly, kind of the last one in there is being able to program. Now you probably have a lot of people who work with you that are excellent programmers, much better than I could ever hope to be. And programming languages are a great way to do this over something like spreadsheets or by hand because of that reproducibility. You could even put something, a couple programs in something like a make file, and you run it again, a very quick way to get reproducible research. So going to kind of the next drawer, closing that one, opening the next one, modeling and testing. I'm just going to tell you what the two tools I use the most throughout the day. The first one is R. Has anyone heard of R? I spent like a lot of time in R. And R is this really horrible programming language that is so wonderful to use. And it was because it was built by statisticians. There's this great paper about R that has this quote, something like, it's an interesting cocktail of programming language features that no computer scientist would ever dream to come up with, but works so beautifully with statistics. It's kind of like a functional language mixed with some other stuff in there. But the ecosystem is awesome. Just the number of people who are using this across a large array of industries, you can do so much in very few lines of R because the very powerful libraries in there. It's an awesome thing for prototyping. And I spend half my day. The next one that's very similar, but in a programming language that a lot of your teams probably are familiar with is IPython. Some of your teams is probably using it or familiar. It's actually really easy to pick up too. Even somebody like me can figure it out because it looks so much like pseudocode. It's just great. And so IPython is this idea of, you know, like these science notebooks you used to have in chemistry class back in high school? It's like that, but it's collaborative. You can put it online. Eventually it'll be coming to Google Docs, apparently. And you can create all these cool interactive features from it, share it with everybody. And then you've got Python code, which can be scaled. That's really cool. R has a little bit of trouble scaling, but Python can scale, put it in a distributed system, make a product out of it. The next drawer is communicating. Communicating online is a lot about visuals. Has anybody heard of D3? I think that this is an excellent tool for visualizing on the web. Of course, you can roll your own, and of course, there are thousands of other solutions, and sometimes they're more appropriate. There's a lot of constraints, considering what do you want to do. But that's it for sort of the communication drawer. So that kind of ends the portion where I talk about web analytics. And I want to talk a little bit about social analytics. So why do we have to do social analytics at Rappler? Well, there's this really interesting trend that's been happening over the last few years. Display advertising isn't really working, right? So it's very difficult for companies, online media companies, to actually keep themselves running. And this is why some news sites have put up a paywall. This is why some are doing native content or content marketing, right? And this is also what's driving all these innovations in advertising. So the trends are really straightforward. The volume of ads, something like Google's double-click, right? Their ads is going way up. The average cost per click for those ads is going down. And then the last one is the decreasing effectiveness of those ads. The last one is sort of ad blocking. So So ad blocking is software. The other thing is like ad blocking webware, right? How effective is advertising on you when you load up a page? Do you even pay attention to it, or do you just zone it out? You already know what it is, right? Your brain kind of automatically just says, I'm not going to look at that. So there's two approaches to solve this problem. The first approach is innovating on the technology of display ads. And that's sort of like trying to get more oil out of the ground, right? We're reaching peak oil, it's a pretty good analogy, I guess. And people are coming up with new technologies, like hydraulic fracturing, fracking, to try to get more oil and resources out of the ground, right? But you're just going to end up squeezing blood from the stone eventually. It's not going to work. And that's getting down into sort of like the segment of normal, right? The other solution to this problem is find a new advertising medium. And one of them is data advertising. Now, the lab outside of data advertising, where we're going to go is social. So why does social work so well? Social is good because it's what a lot of marketers call earned media. People are more willing to trust earned media. So you don't have that ad blocking behavior. Earned media works because it sounds like word of mouth. And word of mouth, if you've ever done any marketing, is like the holy grail of this thing, right? And one of them is just social influence, right? I'll tell you a quick story to figure out kind of how that works. When I first got to the Philippines, this was about 10 months ago, I had no idea about anything here. And I had this new office, with a bunch of office mates. They're all Filipino, and I want to make a good impression on my new office mates, right? So I get up early in the morning before my first shift, and I go, okay, I'm going to buy some breakfast. I'm going to go do some donuts. So we're in Ortigas, so I was over at the mall near there, and I saw there were 2 donut shops outside. One of them was Krispy Kreme, and one of them was Jacob, right? So I'm from California, so the only one of these donut shops I know is Krispy Kreme. And I gotta say, back in the States, Krispy Kreme's actually pretty tasty. And when I looked at it, I said, well, maybe I should go to Krispy Kreme because I know about it. And then I looked at the lines, and there's nobody in Krispy Kreme. And the line's like out the door at Jacob. And I was like, okay, that's the one I gotta get. So I went over to Jacob, I got the line, I got the donuts, and I was like a star. Everybody loved me at work because I picked the right donuts. That's herding behavior. What happened there in my sort of, this econ speak is I had imperfect information. I didn't know what the quality of these donuts was. But I can add up all the information that you guys are signaling to me. And I can say, okay, this is kind of where it's going. This is the wisdom of the crowds, right? Which is kind of like a buzzword. That's what it is, right? And that got me some awesome donuts. Now that can also happen online too. So that's herding behavior. I skipped over one that's social contagion. Let's talk about that for a second. This is a really interesting finding. Social contagion, you guys know about contagion, right? Like a virus can spread physically, right? But views, attitudes, feelings, these things spread socially through our social connections. And this happens not only in sort of this space, but also in the online space. And that's social contagion. And then the last one is sort of thresholds. So how long does this take? How many people have to adopt these sort of things before everybody's having this viewpoint, right? These highlight some important ideas about what the social landscape looks like online. There's communities, there's individuals within those communities, and there's roles. And you probably know this from your everyday life, right? In your company, there are people who look like number 3, who's what we call a boundaries manager. That person that connection between 3 and 4, that can be your bottleneck from one department to another, right? Sometimes when you have 2 departments that work and only 2 people communicate between those 2 departments, there's a lot of inefficiency, right? So a lot of these ideas actually came out of management science, and now we can apply them online because we have more computing power, we have more distributed stuff, we have more data. And so what we do is we suck in all this social media information. So this is one of the ways that we try to create actionable intelligence out of this big data.